Hey guys, Kathy Iconis here, and I'm ready to jump into the reporting section of this training. So I hope you're really excited about it all, just as much as I am. But yeah, we're going to go talk about reporting, what kind of stuff, like how does it all work in QuickBooks Online, and how we can utilize that to help service our clients and get them the reporting that they need and do it easily so that we can still keep on repeating this process and become efficient and really grow a business around this, right? So let's dive into all there is about reporting, everything you need to know, okay? So the first thing I want to talk about are the different types of report types. And this is really helpful knowledge to understand um, what kind of information you're actually going to get out of these reports and then how you can customize them. And that's what we're really going to drill into. What I hear a lot is that people feel like the reporting is not strong enough within QuickBooks Online. And I usually challenge them with, well, the reporting is great as long as you understand what kind of information you can actually get out of different reports and how you can customize them and drill down and get more information about stuff. So, usually, what happens is people are going into a report expecting to get a certain type of information, but it's the wrong report to start with or to even look at or whatever. So, you can't customize it the way you want to customize it, and that turns into an issue, right? So, we're going to talk about what all of these are and what you can do within QuickBooks Online. So you're really going to the right report for the right reason on things. So let's talk about it. There are 4 different types of reports that you're going to see within the reporting area. We have summary reports, detail reports, list reports, and aging reports. And I'm going to go into each one of these. Okay, so summary reports, I feel like you might be thinking, Kathy, okay, really, I got this, right? But there's a method to my madness here. Summary reports are basically anything that summarizes a whole bunch of information, a whole bunch of transactions, right, into a summarized thing, big picture view, so you can understand what's going on. The P&L, the balance sheet, cash flow statement, and any other thing that says summary within your listing of reports is what is actually a summary report. So, what can we do with summary reports? This is the fun stuff, okay? So, when you look at rows and columns here, you see that we have columns listed right there. You can do different options, and I'll jump into QBO in a second, but I want to talk about these little things. We can compare different periods, different information on stuff, and then we can also talk about the filters. So I think instead of this static page, we'll just jump into QBO. And I'm playing around with the sample company today so that we can see that and see what all's in there. So here is a summary report, which is the P&L. Yes, that's one I want to go to. And as you can see right now, I have it set up with this year to date, and so it's pulling all of that information in here. So interestingly, when you click on customize, several of these options over here are also available over here. So I'm going to look at the ones over here first. Just know it can be redundant, but there is more when you get down into filter. You can do different things, okay? So total only, this is, let's look at the column here, right? We have the column is the total. But you can actually break this down even more. So you could run a P&L by customers. So if I did that and run the report, it's going to go and give me all the customers and what transactions I have tagged that are related to that. So if I do have expenses and I'm tracking expenses by customer, that's actually going to show up on here. So I could get a P&L by customer. So this is actually one where Red Rock Diner does have an expense on here, and you can pretty much see a P&L for Red Rock Diner right here. So that's one way to do things. And I mean, there's all these options. I could do it by quarters, right? So we can see how the performance is by quarter on here if you want to. Then let's go back to, I want to do by, well, no, I'm going to go to total only, and then I'm actually going to change this option to last month. Okay, and let's see what kind of transaction history we got in here. Okay, so we have a good amount, right? And then what I want to show is we can show rows that we can show all of them. So if you've ever like you're not using any of the rows for any reason, you'll see that they're all listed here now. QuickBooks automatically just does active ones, right? Anything with any type of activity. Now, what you'll notice is that there is some stuff in here that is blank, right? Oh, I'll just make sure I got that. Okay, no, that is definitely better looking. Now, if something shows up as a 0, so if you had a positive and a negative in an account and it zeroed out, that will show up as a 0 on the P&L or whatever report you're running. If you do click that non-zero, then it will get rid of that line for you so that it's not just like this random 0 listed on there and someone asks like, why is that happening? What's going on there? Right? So you have that option as well. Now, this is the fun stuff. They've added some new things on here, and I'm sure they'll continue to add things. But we can now compare to prior period. So if I have this as last month, it'll be the month before that. Prior year, it'll be September from last year. Year to date, January through September. Previous year to date, which would be last year's January through September. Remember, this is a sample company, so it's not going to have all the like transactions in here. You can see last year's going to be like empty. But you can see September, August, January to September right here. So we got all of this information coming across. In my month-end course, I talk about this. Really, when I'm doing a final review to make sure everything's in the right place, I really like this option so I can compare the periods to each other, kind of see what all's going on, and I will visually go down here and see what big differences there are in things. So I might go and say, okay, well, there's 15, more on the expense side. Let's go with that. See any big jumps on stuff. So accounting was $390 in this month, but there was nothing last month. Do I understand the business where I know that the accounting fee is once a year or whatever they think it might be? So I basically visually just kind of compare these numbers, especially when you have last year, and I'm like comparing 3 lines and going for anything that's really different. So I can research it and know. So when I discuss with the client what's going on, I can answer questions and point out different things. So like rent, did you just start renting? Or should I have had that before? What's going on there, right? Miscellaneous, that's a huge one. Why is that like that? And so it's part of my final review to see like, do the financials make sense? And do I need to make any edits to anything? And then after that, it's a review to, explain why things are differences. It's kind of a variance report of like, why is this off? Why is this changed from one month to another? Did I expect that change? That sort of stuff. So that's why I'm looking at these multiple periods and comparing things, that sort of stuff. Now, we have the option to reorder these columns, so that actually brings it up here. I can change columns, so if I do a % of row, that applies to the actual current month. Okay. So sometimes, yeah, it might be later on and it's just really confusing to look at. So if I did a percent of row, right, that's 100%. I really want to do like percent of column or percent of income. Let's run all of them. So we have all these, but see, I added them and they're like down here. So I'll want to, um, let me go in and reorder the columns. So I'll pull this up. I really don't want that percent of row, percent of income, run report. So percent of the total column right here, and then percent of revenue, so I can see what amounts are going, or the biggest amounts that go to revenue. So within job materials, that's a huge number, right? Versus design income is 17%. That's how the makeup of the business, those sorts of things I start to look at in there. So that's how we can add different columns and play around with that sort of stuff. Let's look at, I'm going to lower this and go to filter. So filter is where you can come in, and you know how I was talking about that one client. If I go to Red Rock Diner, right? Oop, and run that report, it'll show me everything just related to Red Rock Diner. Now you want to be careful here because you might want to change like the title or some sort of information here so you know that you're just looking at Red Rock Diner, because it doesn't automatically give you that change of things, and you know there's no indication other than it's filtered by clients, right? You can do a couple different clients and group them together, that sort of stuff. If so, classes and locations are not active on the sample company, but that would also be a way you could filter it. So yeah, if you have one class of, trying to think, what are some examples? I don't have an example, but so ignore me. So if we go to all customers, I'll take that off. Let's see, design. We can run that report and I can see design income, anything that's related to the product service design in here. So I do have some cost of goods sold related to it, sales of product income, but that's all comes back to that product service listing and what's mapped to the design itself. So if I go in here and click on this, so I have design, right, of $275. That is what is showing up over here. So it's possible that the mapping should be fixed on product service. So it's not actually going to design. Or yeah, this should be going to a different place within the P&L. But it all depends on the setup of the company, right? What is actually going on behind here. It's always the story that goes behind stuff when you are showing the reporting. You want to get the story accurate, so you can explain things that are on here. But yes, I have it filtered by product service. Remember, you might want to edit. You can click on this stuff, edit things. You now have an option to add notes here. So we can do some other customization of stuff if you wanted to. Okay, so that's really the big things that you can customize in here on a summary report. So let's look at the other reports that we have going on here. So next is the detail report, and really that's going to be the majority of the reports that we have in here. If you start typing detail in the search, you will start to see all the options. I just want to show you my little arrow. Okay, you can see all the different options that we have in here. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So detail. So you see these, but I can keep on scrolling down and I see all the ones that say detail in them, and that'll take me to that report. So who wants to go to profit and loss detail? Right? So we have the profit and loss detail, and you can see there's different fields that are showing up on this report versus that summary report, right? So now we have transaction type, now we have memo, we can really better see the splits and all of this sort of stuff that's going on in here, right? So that means there's going to be different things that we can customize for the detail report than we could for the summary report, right? So we still have the time frame. We can still change cash and accrual on that, but let's dive into the customizations, right? So we can change the columns right here, and we can do things like last modified, right? That's something you wouldn't see on a summary report. Or let's see if I don't know if anything's taxable. So taxable amount. Actually, I want to use the tax amount on here, right? And payment method. So I can add these columns. Again, you can change the way, the order of the columns for you. But you could see all of this stuff in here. So this is one of my favorite fields. It's the last modified field. Because it's also like when you created the transaction and it's either when you created the transaction, but if you've made any edits to it since, then that date changes up to that. If you saw in there is a customization where you can do create date, the date it was created. So that's another really cool field that you could run off of. You're not going to see this in a P&L. You're not going to say like, show me the summary of transactions that were added 5 minutes ago or like today, right? But I can run a detail report of everything that was added recently or some sort of filter like that on things. So by just adding this field, that gives you some more information as to what's going on, but I'll show you, you can filter it. You don't have to add this field to filter it, by the way. I like to be able to reference things if I do want to filter by that way. You can see tax amount. We can see payment method. If there's anything, it's a matter of, did you fill in that field when you entered the transaction? So if I have this sales receipt right here, did you fill in payment method? If you didn't fill in payment method, it's not going to give you that information, right? You're not going to see that in there. It doesn't automatically know it was cash or credit card. If you're adamant about making sure that field is filled in, then it'll show up on things. Okay. So we have all this information. Cool, right? Like there's more stuff we can add to it, but these detail reports are obviously a lot longer than the summary reports because we're diving into everything. So if I go in here and customize and filter, this is where we see a lot more stuff on things. We can filter by customer, and I'm not a fan of this all of a sudden. I have my create date, filter, name, header. So here's what I'm going to show you guys, and it's something I didn't even think about before recording this. Because I am listing transactions off of P&L detail, it's kind of limiting what I can see here. So it's not exactly what I was going for, right? So what if I go in and do transaction detail, right? So if I did transaction detail by account, this gives me, and I do it for the year, right? It gives me everything that has been entered by all of the accounts, everything on the balance sheet and everything on the P&L right here. Okay. So if I come over to customize and I go to filter, I see a ton more information in here, right? But let's play around with something. And if I just said all income and expense accounts and ran that report, so that goes back to what I had before, right? It was pretty much the P&L detail. But then I still have all of these options in here. Now, if I have do AR paid, right? And say anything that has been, let's say, unpaid, run report. It will give me the invoices, right? But it doesn't give me expenses because you're not going to have an expense that shows if something has been paid or unpaid. Does it make sense? Right? This is where things come into play of you got to think about what the transaction is, what the fields are on that transaction, and is that going to, impact that on it. So if I get rid of AR paid, some things I do, so if I show all of these, I can say, show me all of the checks, right? So what it's going to show me are all the checks that came out of the checking account, right? But then it's going to show me where they were applied. So I have them applying to the inventory asset, automobile, fuel, right? So I can see that. I'll see both sides of those checks in this view. So if I just want to get rid of checking, because I get it, I don't need that, right? I can actually select all of these and just remove checking and run that report. And it will give me all of the checks with the exception of the checking account, right? Because that's how I did it. It's a lot of customization we can do here, right? And this is where I really get excited about all the stuff that I can do. So we could do last modified date of something like this month. And then I'm going to get rid of the check. And let's see. I'm trying to throw the system off, so let's see. Okay. So I see everything that was created or edited in October, right? So just because the date of the transaction is 9/16, that's not when it was created or added to the system. So that's what I'm doing here is I just want to see that. So I should be able to come on here and last modified and do that. And so I can see what it's talking about. Anything that was done in October, it's showing up here, right? So if you want to see any changes that have been made or something like that that were to prior periods or something, like if you want to see anything that was changed in last year, since last year, you could run that report and say, I want to look at only transactions from last year, right? So that would be 01/01/19, 12/31/19, right? I'd run the report. We're only looking at those transactions, but then I want to say it's last modified in this year and run report and see if anything happens. Sample company doesn't have enough in here, right? But that's how I'd run a report to see those prior period changes. And then you can come down and do, like, you saw there was an option in here where I can custom say, change columns. And I can say last modified by. So who did it? Who made that change to things, so I can kind of track down and figure out why it happened. And does it need to stay that way? What do I need to do? All of those sorts of things. So that's how using reporting in QBO can really be beneficial to understanding the books. Again, making sure they're right, checking on them, and then like drilling down and doing any research on things if we need to. Okay, let's go back to the PowerPoint. So again, we talked about detail reports. We talked about how you can change, move around the columns. You do not have those comparison columns because it's not a summary of anything anymore. So you can't compare a transaction to the prior transaction. Like it doesn't work that way, right? And then we can look at the filters. You saw the weird thing I came into. If I looked at the P&L detail, I wasn't getting all these filters, but by going into the transaction detail by account and then just looking at expenses, income and expenses, it's the same report, but I went a different way and I did get that information. Okay. That one's a weird one to deal with, but I figured it out. We went around it and we got there. Sometimes you do just have to do that transaction report and then filter down to what you want. You'll get there. Trust me. Right? So, let's see. Note you also have grouping options in detail reports. Oh, yeah. We can see here if I run a transaction detail by account, I can actually go in and change that and change my mind and say, no, actually, I want you to run it by vendor. And it'll group it by vendor or product service or whatever those things are. So, what I try to do in my mind is get to a base report that will help me figure out where I'm trying to go. So, it's kind of like I know where I want to go and what report or what path is going to get me to that information, right? So you got to think about the types of transactions that you have that you're looking at. Where do they fall on the whole trial balance? Are they balance sheet account, P&L account, all of those sorts of things? What kind of information do I need off of those transactions? And how do I need to filter it down first and then go through stuff and then change the grouping or something like that? Like, because there's so many, you can, create your own path to get where you need to go on things. So that's what we look at there. Now, list reports. So anything that says list, but also chart of accounts, right? They're going to be pretty much any drop down you have in QBO is what I consider a list report. So looking at this, if I start a new transaction right here, right, it's a drop down. There's going to be a customer list. There's a product service list on here. There's a terms list. If I had classes on, you have that. You can have, that's not best example. There would actually be, in the back end, there's a list of these things, but you get to that sales tax area differently. So looking at those options, and let me go to expense here. So we actually then have this product service as an option. Then we have category, which goes back to the chart of accounts. I can drop down customer. I can drop down what payment method. That's chart of accounts. Now, on an expense, it's going to limit what accounts you can pay it from, right? So, me scrolling, these are the only accounts I can pay off of, right? I can't pay from a loan on here. So, there's different things. And when you run into that issue, you got to do a transfer. Different story, right? Payment method, different payment methods, all of this sort of fun stuff. It all comes back down to the fields. Whenever you have these drop downs, there's going to be a list somewhere in the system. So one thing I do is you can go here and just go to all list. Sometimes it's faster that way, but you're not going to see things. Oddly enough, I don't see customer list on here. I don't see vendor list over here. So it doesn't really, I get some of the list on things. It's not all of the lists that are available. But we can go to reports. If I do list, that will give me like customer contact list. Let's click on that, where we can see everything going on here, right? I can group by shipping city, right? And now it's given me that information. Let's see. Let's do billing state. I can group by that in here, right? So that's the thing I was talking about before. We can group things in different ways. You're not, if you have custom fields, you're most likely not going to be able to group things because it's not a drop down within it. So it's funny, like even within this Duke's basketball camp, it comes back to here, right? And I feel like that's a bad example. All of a sudden, it's a bad example because this is not a drop down. So if they do put in something different, let's see. And let me go back to my report. I think it was this one. Oh, come on. List. And I group by billing state. Let's see if I work the system. So look at that. It's not consistent, right? So Arizona, it's different than AZ. It should be AZ. I didn't get anything that made me just do, actual state letters on it. But yeah, like that's, and then this one doesn't even have one, right? So it does still come back to how you're entering the information and if you can change things around or if you're not doing it consistently. I mean, yeah, if you're not doing it consistently, we're going to run into issues with any of these options and customizations that we can do. So let's look at what we can customize on here. Filter, I can filter down by a specific customer. If they have terms, so remember that's a different list that's available. Customer type, again, a different list. We can create customer types now. Created date, last modified date, deleted, not deleted, all. So if I did that, let's see what we got in here. Do I have, I like playing with the system sometimes and seeing what I can do. Doesn't look like that we have any deleted ones in here, which is fine. But yeah, so if I did this, deleted, and just say the ones that are deleted, run report, and there you go. There's nothing in there. But it'd be interesting if you're going in and you want to see, you want to like restore a whole bunch of customers or something, you can come in here, run this list of customize the list and say just the deleted ones, and then this kind of becomes your to-do list. You go through here and you can reactivate them that way, because what I like to do also, in especially with reporting, is I like to come up and create my own list of like, here are the things that I need to take care of, right? And get them out of this area. So maybe I run a report of just uncategorized expenses, and I go through it and I'm like, okay, all of these need to go somewhere, and let me look at my uncategorized list, make sure there, if there's anything in there, I got to figure it out and take care of it, right? And on cleanup jobs, it's a great thing to do is if you have different areas. So customer list, maybe you're working on cleaning that up, vendor list, chart of accounts, all of these things you can go through and like sort and filter in a way that you can create something like, hey, okay, all these transactions need to be transactions. All of these things that come up on here need to be taken care of, right? And then I'm going to actually save that report and come back to it later and keep on using it so that I know when I'm done with cleaning up that area of the transaction, of the list that I created, my to-do list, right? I'll show you customizations in a second. Then, yeah, we have all these other things. I still, my favorite thing are detail lists or detail reports because that is like what I get the most out of customizing. And I get the most fun out of that. I get geeky on things. Okay. Um, so that's how we can move around with that. List reports. Um, so this is an example of the product service one. So we have a lot more options that we can add to the report because those are all the fields that come in when you add a product or service, right? Anything that you're going to fill in, you can add as a column in here. Those are the filters that I talked about already. Um, let's see, my note here. Sometimes I have to remind myself of the notes. Sorry. You aren't filtering by name or any other list because each list is a separate table in the database. So, yes, correct. You're not filtering by customer in this instance because you're running a product service list, right? And they're not actually attached to a customer on things. So that's why it's not a filter option. So you keep on thinking about it and I'm drilling it into your head. It has to be something that makes sense to either, it all comes back to the type of report: summary, detail, aging, list. Does what I'm looking for make sense, on the different transactions or whatever, to be able to make any customizations off of it, right? So, like I just said, if I'm running a product service list, I can't customize by customer. I can't filter by vendor. Those just aren't options that are related to it. So I just don't have the option. Yeah, you can't do it that way. Maybe you run a customer, P&L detail, and group it by product service, and you can look at it that way and look at which customers or filter out different customers or something, because those are all related. If I do an invoice, I have the product service listed on there and I also have the customer listed on there. So then I'm able to start customizing those fields and creating whatever kind of report I want off of that. Okay. Aging reports, the next topic right here. They're still kind of summaries, but they act differently because of the time buckets that we put in there. So let me go over to AR aging report. So we look at this, right? And it's giving me this breakdown of things. You see I don't have a grouping option over here. But I do have days per aging period, so I could change this to 15 days and give me 6 periods. And it creates it, it adds those more columns on it. So that's what I'm talking about. It's a little different because of the nature of the aging part of the actual report here. So I can also run this as of last month. So what it does is, where were those transactions, those invoices, as of September 30th? Were invoices unpaid at that point in time? Then they would show up here. If there were invoices that were created in October, they do not show up on here because it's as of September 30th. Okay? So you'll see the evolution as to how this shows up on things. Okay, when we look at customization and all of this, we have rows and columns, aging, that's the stuff I showed you, and then filter, I can just kind of go down to, which customers do I want to include? So if you have someone, let's say, that does not apply or is past due or something like that, and that's not part of your conversation with your client because that's a whole different thing you've dealt with, and you have, I don't know, whatever example, right? So I want to just take Duke out of here because they're we don't include them, right? Or I don't know, I'll just take, or in this instance, because I'm checking these off, these are the only ones that show up. So run the report, they're not there, right? So you can run the agings in that way. So let me see. If you had a customer with a whole bunch of projects underneath it, right? And you made sure, though, you were invoicing the project, not the parent company, but the project or the sub customer, you could actually then get an ARJ, the aging of AR, listed out with all of those, just those projects under that main customer. And you could save that as a report that you would give to whoever, right? Remember, it's a matter of who you invoice off of. So while you want to make sure that you're invoicing just the project name and not the main customer, because if you do the main customer, it's just going to show you that across here, right? It doesn't automatically know that you did it to that, like even though all the transactions related to that project, it doesn't know to apply it, that invoice there unless you select the project on your, customer field. So I hope that makes sense what I'm talking about. And I'm just showing you all the nuances of things as to what to expect. That really gets back down to it. You have to know that how you enter information impacts what to expect on the reports. So you just gotta, that's how we look at things that way. Okay. So going back over to my PowerPoint, you can see again, there's just less options on here. And biggest cool thing is determining the time frame on stuff. And I wanted to show you here on the AP aging, that filters by vendor versus the AR aging filters by customer. Makes sense, right? Because those are the sorts of things we're talking about. Okay, let's now talk about cash versus accrual basis reports, because this can be kind of an issue on things. So what I want to let you know is that QuickBooks is only as smart as the information we put into it. Okay? So when the cash basis is supposed to be when you record a transaction that is cash, that is when it's hitting the books. Okay? It is not an invoice. It is not a bill, because those aren't cash situations. It's when you receive the payment, that's cash. It's when you pay the bill, that's cash, right? So it really, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't, you can still track invoices within QBO, but it only looks at when you receive the payment when it comes down to reporting. On the accrual basis, we want to match expenses to the revenue when it's incurred, right? So revenue is reported on the invoice date itself. Doesn't matter when you get paid for that invoice. It shows up on the P&L the day of the invoice. Okay? Bill shows up on the P&L the day of the bill, not when you actually pay the bills, when you do the bill. Okay, so when you think about it, there's two different transactions with each of these, right? If you have an invoice, that's one transaction, and then you have receive payment, that's another transaction. Both of those have different dates, and then that's how it defines how it shows up on your P&L. Now, journal entries only have one date, so it's only recording on one date. Okay? So if you're doing a journal entry that is making an adjustment to the books to properly get it into an accrual basis, so accrued expenses, prepaid expenses, deferred revenue, all of these different kinds of journal entries that we can make to make proper accrual-based reports. A lot of those go through journal entries, right? There's only one date. So QuickBooks doesn't see like what the other option is to add it or to fix it when you go from cash to accrual. So journal entries, when you look at cash basis and you've done these accrual adjustments, they're still showing up as cash basis. And they're still sitting in the time periods that you do it. It doesn't reverse it out automatically. It doesn't know. It's not smart enough because there's no field in there to know that there's that difference on things. So heads up, that's what's going on. While I'm speaking this, talking out loud, I'm like, I wonder if there's a way you can kind of work the system to do those accruals through like invoices or bills so that it does automatically fix it. But that's a whole weird, yeah, that would be a huge, crazy thing. And I have no idea how you'd manage that. I already have enough problems when I was handling like all those specific journal entries. Most of that time, I'm doing that in a spreadsheet to know that I'm taking care of things properly, and I have support for how I got to those numbers that I'm doing journal entries for. But the next part of this cash versus accrual basis is to understand, like what QuickBooks is doing behind the scenes, right? So cash basis, there should be no AR because we aren't dealing with invoices, we're just dealing with cash. So you can see the difference between the balance sheet here, right? We have accrual and we have cash. You do not see accounts receivable over here. Another topic, inventory. Well, on a cash basis, you don't really track inventory. You record the expense as it happens, as the money comes out. So there's no, it adjusted for that. Okay, it took care of it. It's gone. It's not on the balance sheet. It's just an expense. Whenever, you buy anything, it's just sitting in the expense account. Accounts payable, it's gone over here. I will tell you, the only time you're going to see accounts receivable, maybe even inventory and accounts payable over here is when it's a negative. Okay, because then it means there was some sort of cash impact and we had to force it onto the P&L and make it work over there. And so we had to make the adjustment to a negative over here. Now, you don't want to see negative AR in the first place, right? Because it doesn't mean anyone owes you anything. It means the reverse. And it's really not what we're going for. So if you are reviewing cash books and they do have AR and AP and stuff, and it is going to be a negative balance, it's something you want to figure out and clean up probably, because it's not exactly what we're going for on reporting. So let's look on the P&L side. This is where these crazy little accounts come into play. Unapplied cash payment income, unapplied cash bill payment expense. Okay. What this is like, this is how QBO is dealing with cash differences of things. Okay. So I'm going to have to like share in the notes or something there. Debbie Kilsheimer, I think I got that right. She has a great way of renaming these accounts that make total sense versus what QBO gave us. But pretty much it's like you get paid before the invoice date, right? Or you pay a bill before the bill date. So it has to get that cash in there, but it's not putting it to whatever account it was in that instance, right? It's just plugging it in here. So sometimes you're going to see a running balance. If you drill down into this detail, you could see the running balance of things. But let's see. If we look at this, I was going to compare the two, but you can't because it's cash versus accrual. But yeah, there were transactions that were pushed in here to make this happen. Okay, I was playing around with it and I made it happen. But so this is what I want to show you. Good thing I did this screenshot too, right? It's like I know what I'm doing here sometimes. Okay, so here we have an invoice that's dated 10/31, and I'm recording this, and so 10/31's in the future, right? But we paid it last month, so that doesn't make sense, right? We made the payment before it was actually invoiced. For whatever reason, maybe we're recording the deposit on it or something, and we're doing it this way. I don't know, right? But that, because we get the cash before the recording of the invoice, that triggers it going to unapplied cash payment income. You can't do anything about this. It automatically happens. QBO does it. You can't. The only thing you can do to fix it is to change the invoice date or the payment date. And I really wouldn't change the payment date because that's reality. Maybe you can get away with changing the invoice date to like 9/1 and then it won't show up over here, right? It's just, but because of that difference of cash and then the transactions recorded, it's going to trigger this, right? So the same would be, it would work the same way on bill payment expense side. So when we look in that transaction, we see there's the payment date and it's applied to the invoice that's dated 10/31. It's just, that's the way it happens. There we go. And it triggers that unemployed bill payment, blah, 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 blah thing. So this is actually a different example, a different company that I got the screenshot from. Oop. And what I'm showing you here is that there are a ton of ins and outs of here. So you can see that things are just changing. QBO is automatically fixing this stuff as it goes and as things happen. The problem that comes into play here is if you're someone that's entering a bill for a credit card, right? So think about it. If I enter a bill for a credit card, one side of that is the credit card account on the balance sheet. The other side is accounts payable on the balance sheet. They're two balance sheet accounts, right? Well, they're making adjustment to the P&L to reverse it on you. And that doesn't exactly make sense in the grand scheme of things, especially on the tax side, because what happens is, you know, IRS says if you paid it by credit card, you can deduct it in that period. Well, QBO is trying to come in here and like fix that for you, and that's not really what we want to fix on things. So I would definitely be careful of that and look when you're looking at cash and seeing what makes up the account and seeing if that's an issue. There's certain customers where I would go into a system and create a bill and you pay all your bills, right? But if you're going a different way, so say you just went to the credit card website and paid it through there, then it would come in through the bank feed and you'd say it's a credit card credit or whatever. Then that doesn't impact it here. It all comes down to that bill and the bill screwing this up. So it's not going to be a problem in all situations. It's just a matter of you kind of got to look at it and see if it's working right, and be aware that this could mess with things. Okay, let's talk about memorized reporting. So all of those different types of reports, I can come in here. So I customize it, I play around with it, and then I want to memorize it, right? So on the report itself, there's a big green button that says Save Customization, right? And that's where all of these memorized reports, now custom reports, come into play. They're changing titles and stuff all the time. You guys know that. Okay, so things you can do with these. You could share the reports with other users. So if you have, I'll show you that. like what users you can share it with and that sort of stuff. I can export the report here. I can delete the report here. And I can also go in and do some editing. That's also where I share the reports. And one thing to note is that when we talk about management reports in a minute, we can add any of these reports to a management report. So, cool thing, I can email reports automatically. It's really kind of cool. So, let's go in here. Going over to reports. Let's do some custom reports. Let's make one. So, let's go into transaction detail by, what do you want to do? Transaction list by customer. And let's do year to date, run report. So I did it by customer. Changed my mind. Let's see. Run report, doing it by account. Okay. Now I have a wholly different report. Let's see. I'm not sure I want to do that. Do by month. Cool. Okay, so they're still by customer. One thing to note, transaction list by customer, it grouped it by customer, they don't put that field on there because in their mind it's redundant. So I have to go in and add the field, and then I want to reorder the field, so it goes right back up there, run report. Okay, so I've built this nice little awesome report. I got it grouped by month. It's detailed by customer. I have my customer name now. So I have all this information. It's so cute, right? Don't you love it? Okay. So I'm going to save this customization. Transaction list by customer. I might do it by month too. So here's things we can do. Add this report to a group. There's no groups right now, so I could add a whole new group on there, and I can share it with everyone or no one on here. And then save. Okay. Now, when I come back to reports, I can customize the report. And if I come in here and so right here you have the option export to PDF, export to Excel. I can delete it. But if I just click edit right there, then I have the options again. Do I want to add this to a report? Creating a whole to a group, sorry. Add this to a group, creating a whole new group, or if I have one already, I can add it in there. Share it with whoever I want on here. Now, because this is a sample company, it's not showing me more options, which would be if I have a lot of people on my firm, I can share it with just firm only users, or can I share it with all users? So there really should be three options. My way of saying three options. Okay, so I set my email schedule here, right? It repeats daily, every day. Do I want to send it? Do I do it weekly, twice a month, end date? All of that sort of stuff. I can say who I'm going to email it to, attach the report as Excel in there, or do I just, if it doesn't, then I think it's a PDF. The tip I am going to give you is that you always want to CC yourself on these, because you know how when you send out a report and someone replies and it's a reply, but so the first email had an attachment, and when you reply, the attachment's not there. That's what happened to me for the first, I don't know how long it took me to figure this out. People will reply to me and I have no idea what report they're talking about. None whatsoever. So I kind of go crazy on things and be like, what's happening? I don't know what I'm doing. So that's why I CC myself on everything now. So that is that. Now, if I go into here, if I click on transaction, whatever, and I want to get rid of this and go back to customer, run report, I can save the customization. So what I can do here, if I save it just like this, then it overwrites what I did before. Okay. So it takes away what I did before. If I want to, though, I can change the name and just say by customer, right? And do save. Now, when I go back to reports, I have two of these instead of just one, right? So there are a lot of times that I will come in, customize a report, and then customize it again and save that new customization as a whole different report. Example, if I want to run P&L by a customer and do a lot of those customers and save them in here, maybe even group them in there, I'd start with one, go in, filter it with the other customer, save it, have all that going on, and so I can make my whole list. So I don't have to recreate the wheel every single time I go in there. So fun times, right? Okay, going back over to this. That's my little auto email. I love that. One way I actually use this is that I have a client that they have staff that enter in their time every week, right? So I was getting tired of like just catching up with them and saying like, hey, can you enter your time? Like, okay, they haven't entered their time. I need to go track them down, enter the time, all that sort of fun stuff, right? Just, bleh, right? So instead, what I've done is I set up an automatic report that goes out every week. And what it is, so I created a whole custom report and I said, give me the time activities that were just created last week, right? That's my report. Every single time activities that were created last week. So every Monday or Tuesday, I think I'm now set up to Tuesdays. Every Tuesday, I send out this report. So, and it says, hey, this is your time that you entered from last week. Can you confirm this is correct? So when they open up the report and there's 0 time in there and they reply to me, then they need to say, oh, I've updated my time now. It's all good to go. Okay, so that's how I've cut down on me having to track it down and all that sort of stuff. And I just have it set automatically so that they're confirming with me like, hey, yeah, that's right, we're good to go. Now, sometimes I still have to track people down, but the amount of time that automations helped is beneficial to me in my practice, right? Like I'm not trying, and then I get frustrated with people that don't enter their time, and then I could sound like you can get that frustration in the emails, and it's just not worth it in the end. So this is much more like, hey, this is our routine, this is what you're going to get, just let me know, and I put that in the notes and I copy myself so that I know what was sent out. So yeah, and then I can follow up if I need to, but again, it's just, I like setting up that memorization, that the auto stuff that goes out, right? Okay, wait, wrong one, PowerPoint. Okay. I showed you guys about the editing the memorized reports. I jumped ahead, sorry. Yeah, if you change the name, it will create a whole new report for you. It's awesome. If you just save the customization, it's going to update the report that you have with that report name. So be sure you want to do that. And you don't make any mistakes that way. So fun reports for accounting nerds. Wait, that's me. Okay. So this is one I was talking about. Create a detailed report that includes all of transactions, right? So here you have all dates, but that is customized. So it's anything that's modified or updated for a specific period. So anything that in this instance was created in September 2018. I want to see everything that was done then, right? So what you see is, okay, in September 2018, I created a lot of transactions from January, and the list goes on, right? It helps me investigate what's going on behind the scenes, and it gets me into my dorkiness. I love that stuff, right? I mean, it's kind of awesome. Then this other one, let's see. This is, running a report off a balance sheet. This is a cleanup example that I use in my cleanup course. Um, so I have a clearing account. When you do a cleanup, I say like everything you can't deal with easily just goes up to the cleanup account, right? Because you'll there's a whole process if you want to know, but that's yeah. In general, that's what I say. And so maybe I put it all in here, put it in the cleanup account. In this instance, I grouped it by vendor, right? So I can see the balances by vendor in here, and maybe that's helping me do any more cleanup in here. Again, I'm running a report, customizing it in a way to help me do something, accomplish something. So in this cleanup, I'm doing a cleanup, right? So I'm going to create a report, customize it to help me with some part of the cleanup that I need to handle. Okay. And that's, fun, kind of cool things that you can do in here. And I realized I don't have, and let's see if it works in here. One of my favorites. So you guys know undeposited funds usually happens to be a huge issue on cleanups, right? We have this okay, undeposited funds, great, wonderful. What's going on here, right? One way to figure out what is undeposited funds is I can create a, where are you? Bank deposit, right? And it will list undeposited funds. Awesome. Cool. What if I'm doing a cleanup and there's like 500 of these? That's a total pain in the butt and I can't figure this out. What's going on, right? What I like to do to help me understand things, and again, giving me some sort of list for me to research transactions, is I like to click on here, do undeposited funds, right? And so this is from January to October. And I group it by customer, run the report. Okay. So what happens is you see all the ins and outs that relate to the customer and their ending balance. Okay. Great. For me in this instance, it's not the best explanation because it creates all this other junk that already cleared. We had it sitting in undeposited, but we deposited it. So what I actually like to do is just do it for one day, like the day that I'm looking at it. And then it gives me exactly the clients that are creating the problem in undeposited funds. So Cool Cars balance is $1,600. That could be one invoice, 20 invoices, whatever, but that's my problem, right? Or payments, sorry, not invoices. And there's, Freeman Ocean 387, right? So I have that. So I really pinpoints where those issues are so I can drill into it and figure out what's going on things instead of just trying. Yeah, if you just run undeposited funds, this does not help you. And it's hard because when you're dealing with most other accounts on the balance sheet, you can reconcile them so that you know that they're kind of taken care of, but you can't reconcile undeposited funds. So you can't just say this 460, they offset each other and kind of get rid of them when you're looking at the reconciliation screen. That's taken care of, right? So this is my way to just say okay, here are the clients that have that balance that's open to deal with. Okay. So really that's one that a little secret in my think I do it in cleanup and month-end course that I talk about, but one of my favorite little things to go in to figure this stuff out. Okay, moving on to management reporting. This is a great way to just get some professional report to your clients. And you have a lot of customization in here. It just might not look like it when you first approach this area. So let's talk about what we can actually do in here. So this is a nice, pretty report. I try to we're just going to go into it because guess what? Me taking a screenshot of a PDF doesn't really work very well, right? So I'm going to open this one up. So you can see here that we have a nice management report, have information, table of contents. It shows you the profit and loss, not in the weird Excel spreadsheet funky look, right? You know what I'm talking about. Um, Scroll down, balance sheet, look at that. And that's what I have in the report, right? It looks pretty. It's nice. As a client, I'd feel more comfortable getting that, as possibly, depends on the client, than a whole bunch of Excel spreadsheets, right? Um, the format's nice. So if I come in here and I edit it, this is where we start to get into customization. So I could change this report to just last month, right? And that's going to come in here and change a lot of these other reports and stuff that we have going on. I can change the name of the management report. Unfortunately, my preview screen is kind of broken. I think it's from the sample company. But otherwise, it would show you the updates that you make when you write anything over here. But you see there's like different looks and feels. Like I can change that to black and white. I can change this. I can add a logo if I want to, like the company logo, whatever, right? Prepared by, prepared date, all of this. Prepared date is usually filled in with the current date, but sometimes you make sure you just check that, right? So you have those kind of options that are going on in there. Then you have an option to add a table of contents if you want to, and it would populate in here. I can include some preliminary pages if you want. Add several of those in here. Page title. This little area right here gives you an option to put dynamic fields in here. So report end date. That's every time, like last month or whatever, it'll update it to the right date. Company name, it would update it to the right company name, which should be this, but I don't know. Maybe you're doing locations and they're different divisions. I no clue what an example of that would be. So you have options to put stuff in here, right? Then we have our listing of reports. I'll get back to that in a second. And then we have end notes, and I can do things like break down all the sub accounts for me, page titles. Yeah, do I want to include this in the report? Do I not? That sort of stuff, right? So let me go and save and close. Now, because I made changes to the default that was given to me by QuickBooks Online for this company overview, they're going to force me to save it as a copy, right? So I'm going to say company overview last month. So just changing the name changes it, okay? So now it's up here, new name, new report, thing I put in there, right? Then one other thing before I get into the reports itself. This also shows you the report fields, what we're talking about, the examples. Hey, there's where you can update the company name. I knew there was a reason. Then you have header option, footer, that goes across everything. So if you're going to say for management purposes only on your reporting, I would come down to the footer and put that in there. Okay? All the way. All the time. On the footer. Not just the first page. So, coming back to reports. So, I changed to last month, and it automatically changed these to last month. Pretty cool, right? I can add, like, compare previous year, compare previous period. And so, it will just know that when you run the reports. And then here, I can add whatever reports I want. This list does include the custom reports that I have. Can you guys remember the custom reports? Labeled. Oh, I'm like, I don't remember. I did this with you and I forgot them. How crazy am I? Do 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 do. Oh, duh, they're the first ones. Okay. So, and I can change this to last month, right? And save. And I go in and I do a print preview. Let's see how this works. So I changed the view of it, like it's a nice different look, right? My table of contents automatically updates based off of what's going on. We have notes that are listed in here now because that shows you the detail of what's broken down. You'll see it on these things. So all these things that have sub accounts, it's doing that for you. Balance sheet, all pretty fancy. Added my nice little fancy list on here, just for September. Yippee, right? Formatting definitely needs to be updated on things. And when it does, like, yeah, when it's too long, it does just automatically flip it to landscape. Not my favorite all the time, but. And then this is that in notes area. I didn't put a title on the page or anything, but it splits out what all those details are that are underneath that main account. So landscaping services is the main one. See right here. And that's where you have that note. So number 2 is going to be shown as number 2 on the report above. All of that fun jazz. So that all, it automatically does it. So you can just save it and send it off to a client when you want to, right? One important thing to know about this is that you can't just move these around, right? I should be able to click and move it up. So if you do want to move your report listing, what you need to do is like delete it and then delete it. So I delete that and then add it back in what order you actually want it to be in. So if I want to do a balance sheet first and then do a P&L right there in prior period, save, then it's going to change that formatting and change the listing. So those are coming first, then the balance sheet, and then the P&L, and then all the pages, other options I want to include are still in the right areas. So that's how that works. I save and close. Now, so I have 2 examples in here. So if I wanted to change this to now look at this, try this year to date, right? And view it. Let's see how that works on here. So this actually gives me year to date information. That gives me year to date. And that gives me year to date. The problem that's going to come into play is if you save or customize a report for exact dates, not actually using that drop down field that you have on all the reports as to what day you're doing it in. If you do exact dates, it's not going to update right over here when you do the reports. It's not going to know what period you really meant before, if there's any changes. So you want to make sure you're watching that. The other thing in here, so we can export it to a Word doc. And if you want to make any changes to that, you can. Makes it pretty, right? And it does all of that for you. It doesn't go into Excel. It does PDF or Word, right? And you just send it, and you have the option here to copy or delete these. But what I'm going to say is you can't auto send these. Like you could auto send customer reports. You cannot auto send management reports or auto email them. Makes sense to me because I want to make sure that all my month end management reports all done before I actually send it. Like I want control over that. But yeah, that's one thing that you need to know on there. So let's go back over here. Make sure I covered everything. We have those, the different pages you can have, the reports, the advanced settings and how you can copy and do all that fun stuff. And that is it. That's the end of the reporting session lesson area covered today. I've lost my mind. So I really, really hope you have gotten a lot out of this and understand how much reporting can you can do with QBO and accomplish things in here. It is a really, I still think that there's a lot you can do with reporting as long as you understand what's going on behind the scenes and how that connects to the type of report you want to create. I think you can really do almost anything with them, but it's that understanding that makes it hard. That kind of like is that learning curve to get there and can prevent a lot of people, and they just get frustrated with it. So I hope you've learned how those connections are made, and like you feel empowered to create what kind of stuff you want for things, customizing reports, emailing out stuff, and definitely the management reports. Now, there are plenty of apps out there that can go to a whole new level on management reporting. But if you have a client that doesn't need all of that, these are great tools to have. It depends on your engagement with the client, where you're going with things. But these are great, great options in here. So again, hope you enjoyed everything there is to know about reporting. And thank you. Thank you for joining me. And I will see you soon. Bye, guys.